They're watching. Don't react. The words screamed up at him in ketchup, drawn across the white rim of the plate like a wound stitched in blood. Dorian Cale's throat tightened. For a moment, time fractured. The chatter of customers, the clatter of forks, all folding into a silence that pressed against his skull. The waitress lingered. Her hands trembled as though she were holding broken glass instead of a tray. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile painted on the faces of mannequins. Lifeless, brittle, doomed to crack. Dorian's pulse thundered against his ribs, louder than the noise around him. He forced his jaw to stay calm, his fingers to remain still, though every instinct screamed to run. The air itself seemed to weigh more, thick and oppressive, as if the entire room were leaning toward him, waiting to see what he would do. If it were you, what flag would you raise? The thrift store shirt smelled faintly of mothballs, a stale odor that clung to his skin like mildew. The denim sagged at the knees, worn thin from strangers' lives, the cuffs frayed like unraveling rope. On his head, a faded cap pressed sweat into his hair. To anyone watching, Dorian Cale was another weary man, alone and unimportant. But beneath the fabric, hidden under the disguise, lived a multi-millionaire who once signed contracts worth more than some cities earned in a month. The paradox noted at him. The man who shook hands with governors who ordered suits from tailor flown in from Milan now wore a shirt that barely buttoned. He felt grotesque. As if he were mocking himself. The costume was meant to make him invisible. Yet it made him feel exposed. Ridiculous, counterfeit. Each step inside this world of cheapness was a cage, each seam a bar. He shifted in his chair, the fabric itching against his skin, and realized the disguise was working. For the first time in decades. He was no one, and being no one felt unbearable. Memory ambushed him. 20 years earlier, Dorian stood beside a rusted food truck, smoke curling from its crooked chimney. He had nothing but a recipe scribbled on napkins and hands scarred from fire and grease. Tennessee air had been hot that summer, sweat dripping down his neck as he served ribs to strangers from the side of a battered truck. From that rust came an empire. 47 restaurants across 8 states. Investors shook his hand. Magazines placed him on glossy covers. Conferences hailed him as a pioneer of authentic barbecue. His name whispered in boardrooms, printed in business schools. Celebrated as proof that grit could turn into gold. And yet, sitting here in this cheap disguise, the glory tasted hollow. The world saw a titan, but he felt a chasm widening between him and those who carried plates, scrubbed floors, served his ribs. Each achievement, each accolade pushed him further from the family atmosphere he once swore to protect. Success had become a wall, and on the other side stood the people who made it possible. He could see them, but he no longer touched them. The reports arrived on polished letterhead, full of metrics and neat percentages. Employee satisfaction steady. Customer complaints minimal. Revenue reliable. Numbers so clean they gleamed like marble. But beneath them, faint echoes carried through. Soft whispers and anonymous surveys. Murmurs caught in hallways. Rumors tucked into brief conversations. He remembered hearing one. A server in Nashville muttering that tips had vanished too quickly. Another, a cook in Atlanta, saying nothing ever changed, no matter how loudly they spoke. The words were faint, brushed aside by middle managers with smiles too wide, assurances too rehearsed. On paper, everything thrived, but instinct told him otherwise, something rotted underneath the spreadsheets, something unseen. He could feel it, a splinter beneath the skin of his empire-spreading infection. That was why he had chosen this charade. This second skin of poverty, to hear what the numbers concealed, to step into the silence and force it to speak. He leaned back, scanning the room, and waited for the truth to surface. The air hit him first. Smoke of hickory and spice. The same fragrance that once filled him with pride, now pressed against his chest like a suffocating cloth. Each breath carried not triumph, but heaviness. He looked around. Booths, upholstered in vinyl, cracked like old skin. Tables scarred by years of careless knives, light flickering weakly through tired bulbs. It should have been familiar. 47 times over he had approved. This look, called it efficient, cost-effective. Now it felt like decay. Plates clattered. In the distance, laughter rolled from a family in the corner. But the sound was hollow, brittle, missing warmth. The smiles he once remembered in his first restaurant, full, genuine, careless, were gone. Everything here wore a mask. Every detail reflected back at him, not his success, but his accusation. He had built this place and abandoned it at the same time. In the faded glow of his flagship, he felt the distance between who he had been and who he had become. Coldness seeped through the smoke, whispering that pride had curdled into estrangement. She could not have been more than 19, but her eyes carried the fatigue of someone twice her age. Horror. Lips curved into a smile, thin and peremptory. A smile painted on for strangers, never reaching her eyes. Table for one, she asked, not really asking. Her gaze fixed on the chart before her. The words felt like a script, lifeless and rehearsed. Dorian nodded. She turned and guided him through the room, weaving between tables with mechanical grace. The air between them felt empty, as if even conversation was a burden she no longer had strength to bear. She stopped at a table near the kitchen door. The chair wobbled beneath him when he sat. A corner seat, slightly